live.
Great. All right, welcome everyone. Executive Committee meeting, February 5th. Give you a call.
Ms. Crimer?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yeah.
Ms. Mail?
Present.
Mr. Michelson?
Here.
Present.
All right, great, thank you, Larry. All right, we need to set and approve the agenda. Everyone has had a chance to look at it. We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Nope. And then if we can have, we need to approve the minutes from last meeting. We have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting for any edits.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. We have some guests with us tonight to talk about the Elbrook and Leahy improvements. And we've got about 20 minutes for that.
Okay, so the committee is aware, we had applied for round 2 sort of funding 2 years ago, I guess it was, and we received that. And the project identified was to reconfigure the Elbrook and Leahy intersections on Lusanaville. Part of that project was to modernize the control signals. The stoplights and the walk signs are very, very old that are at those 2 intersections. We're spending a lot of money as an organization on doing repairs on those signals. And we've looked into just replacing the signals, but the poles are too low for modern equipment that's available that we can purchase. So we need to replace the stanchions. We also did the Lusanaville road study last year through our engineer and TEC, which is a part of their company, or JMA is part of TEC, however that works. But there were a number of improvements that were suggested for Lusanaville from Englewood to the railroad tracks in our borderline with the city of Cincinnati. So we looked at those, we incorporated a number of those improvements. I've asked our engineers here this evening to explain the plan that they've come up with. Council had reviewed the road study, which is in the packet for this evening. So you have the ability to go back and take a look at that again. For those of you that didn't get to give input, perfectly would welcome that feedback if you want to take a look at that and touch base with me. But this evening, the mission is to take a look at what they're suggesting and move forward with that project. We're in a position that we need to have bids out by.
Like to have bids out in the next 4 weeks. You know,
Okay.
Yeah.
To actually do the work. So in this is a significant investment in these 2 intersections. The reason we did the road study to begin with is we want to make sure that the changes we make to those 2 intersections flow with whatever we do as an ultimate project with Lusanaville in the future. So we don't want to do something now and then say, oh, we don't like that, let's change it and get rid of it later. So this is a pretty comprehensive change for us. Jennifer, Dylan, if you'd like to introduce yourselves. And also this is a chance for the engineer to meet council. We have some new members, and it's a great time to figure out who we're working with here.
Yeah, so thank you for having us. We're happy to be here and answer any questions you might have. I'm Jennifer Batter. I'm with JMA Consultants. Been with the company for about 25 years. And as Ron mentioned, we recently merged with TEC in the last year, so they were more traffic oriented. We're more civil engineering. We both kind of do the same things. It's a perfect fit, so we're excited to be together. We would sub to them and they would sub to us anyway, so we decided to officially join. So we're here together. And I'll let Dylan go over the specifics of the plan, but as Ron mentioned, this particular project, it's sort of funded, and so we are under a time crunch, not time crunch, but we've come this far. There's a schedule that we have to meet, so this is where we are kind of in the final design phase. And as he mentioned, these are just for these two intersections, and then that future safety study, whatever the council chooses, we can go forward with any other improvements as we look to plan that in the future. So we want to be sure that these incorporate. So Dylan, you want to kind of introduce yourself, and then we can kind of go through the specifics of the plan. We have a sheet here. We can leave with you. We know that you don't have all evening for us to go through everything, so we're happy to address anything.
My name is Dylan Osborne. I've been with TEC Engineering for the past 10 years. Traffic signals, operations, safety, pedestrian improvements, those are all my bread and butter. So this project is right up my alley. I think it's important to hit on what Ron was saying, that these two traffic signals in particular are past their service life. And once you get to that point, then you just kind of start dumping money, and it's inefficient operations, and it's inefficient for your budget. So this is a good opportunity to upgrade these, and kind of foolproof them for the next 20 or 25 years. It's a good way forward. Also, as we've talked with Ron, they're going to be a lot more visually appealing than what's out there now, than just the wood poles and the wires hanging down. From a safety standpoint, we're going to be increasing signal head size. So right now, the signal head size, they're 8-inch signal heads. So your indications aren't necessarily as visible. The standard size is a 12-inch signal head. I say signal head, the 12-inch red, yellow, and green, each is 12 inches. We're also going to be adding backplates, reflective backplates. So that's the black backplate with the yellow reflective striping. So it increases signal visibility. I think they're extra beneficial in the event you have a power outage. Traffic signals are four-way stop to power outages, and most people don't realize that. They drive right on through. So it's just another indication to say, hey, there's a traffic signal here, and you should stop and think about what you're doing. Instead of the wires hanging out, the plan is going to be for mast arm signals. And so you're going to have the black poles and the black arms that go out over the road. And so you're going to have vehicle detection right now. If you drive through the intersection out here at Municipal Sandoval, it just kind of cycles nonstop because the detection is broken. So this is going to put in new detection for vehicles. It's also going to put in new detection for pedestrians. So it's going to utilize push buttons so that again you don't have constant cycling unnecessarily. In conjunction with these traffic signals, we're also going to be doing concrete curb bump outs on the north side of each intersection. And we've got these prints here. I'm going to pass out these full plans to the committee, just so. Ron, do you want to send these? I know I emailed it to you. Do you want to send it?
No, I have a set. Thank you.
They're also available on our website for anyone who wants to look at them online.
Some people like paper, some people like prints. So I say, let's see. So I bring up the curve bump outs. So if you go to sheet 7 and sheet 8, it gives you a detailed view of what we're going to be doing at the intersections. And again, we have some of these improvements transposed on top of areas.
Yep. So we can leave or pass around however you would like. Got a couple of them, and then just an aerial as well, just to shows existing.
Can we ask questions while you're presenting this, or would you like us to listen in?
Yeah.
I'm just curious why we're doing a curb bump out if the issue is the signals. I know that was in the Los Angeles safety study, but from everything I've read in the safety study, there was no issue with pedestrian safety, so I'm not sure why we're investing more into do a curb bump out.
So we originally looked at the bump outs for the potential of space. That's kind of the bigger issue. So in particular on the northwest corner at both of these intersections, the right of way is very tight. So it kind of gives us room to add in pedestrian push buttons and pedestals with pedestrian signal heads without eating into the sidewalk too much. It also gives us the ability to put in new ADA compliant curb ramps.
So the current ramps are not ADA compliant.
Correct.
They were probably ADA compliant when they went in. They just
So
may
they
not
don't meet
meet the
current
current standards, and those standards do change on a very regular basis.
And as speaking of ADA compliance, so for the longest time, it's been based on guidelines. And so recently, what has been guidance regarding ADA has now become law. And so the Federal Highway Administration is kind of in the process of changing their policies so that it's no longer just a guideline. It's saying, hey, you have to do this because this is it's not a suggestion, but it's part of
Like a requirement, yeah.
but the bump outs, so the bump outs work in conjunction with, as you said, the safety study. So it didn't necessarily identify an immediate need for pedestrian safety. Part of the spirit of safety, there's been kind of a transformation in the industry is not doing something reactively, but doing it proactively. So we're designing not just safety solutions, but safe systems. And what goes into that is the idea of we want to do everything in our power. And the bump outs especially are kind of a low cost measure compared to the signals themselves are the big chunk of this project. The bump outs are an easy way to identify, hey, we don't have traffic capacity issues at either of these intersections right now. And so we saw an opportunity to make safety improvements to the intersections while we were already going to be disturbing them. So that was the spirit of the bump outs. I bring up the change in thinking with safety. The bump outs are for pedestrian safety, but also it's something that can kind of add a little bit of friction per se for drivers. And so it's something that can help slow down speeds along Los Santabelle. Where we can, we're intending to add street parking, and so that gets into to do the bump outs. We're doing a little bit of a road diet, which will be best illustrated. It's illustrated here in the prints in front of you, or in the plans. Go to what we're going to be changing for pavement. 12 and 13. Again, this is for the construction plans. It's illustrated pretty well on these bigger sheets. What we're basically going to be doing in order to put in the bump outs is basically.
Yeah, we could put one over here and one here. That would be helpful.
I would say feel free to gather around the maps if that helps to facilitate.
Is it saying it's a different area, but there's no stuff?
It's kind of more superimposed on top here.
So Centerville, we, so, yeah, so they're, these are the bump outs here.
So to put in the bump outs, we're basically reducing our lanes. It's a 4-lane section now. What we intend to do is to bring it down to a 3-lane section. West of the study area, it's a 2-lane road, and east of the area, it's a 2-lane road. So what we're doing is we're bringing it down to one travel lane in each direction and then left turn lanes.
Kind of match what's on the other.
Yeah.
What's the other.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you see this in a lot of instances where at some point in time, somebody wanted to expand a road. And this is a good example where it's 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 2 lanes, but 4-lane section just isn't necessary. It can be better utilized. In this case, we can add in some street parking. We can also create a dedicated space for 2 of the bus stops along with Santiville. And again, it's all kind of in conjunction with these pump outs. And I should say to you, these layouts start on the west end and then work their way east as they actually.
Quick question. On sheet 8 here, it's this corner here is labeled Cincinnati Community Colo. This would be the south side of Elbrook or Losantiville. And over here we have it on the north side, like you
Yeah, I think I got that wrong.
mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's our property. It's still on the north end.
6502.
This one of the only, this one right here, that's the residence and that's the.
Oh, that's the residence? Okay, never mind then.
This is Cincinnati Colo just to the west of.
It's they
There's 2.
they own catty corners apparently.
They don't fall into one building. So they have 2 buildings here and then they also have across the street.
So never mind. I'm mistaken.
Okay.
Ron, can you help us with a little bit of background of when, council approved this out of the Los Angeles study and what exactly was approved?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you with the mask.
Can you give us some updates on when this was approved by council and what exactly was approved by council out of the Los Angeles study?
So the council gave input on the actual study itself in terms of what the provisions were that were provided, whether anything was, probably the best way to say it, there was something in the study that they didn't want to do, essentially. So there were some components out of the study that were included in this particular plan. So one of the things that we were reacting to is there had been a child who had been injured on Elbrook
He was struck by
at the
a car.
intersection.
Yeah.
One of the goals is to try and improve the safety and markings along this particular area of Losantiville Avenue around the school.
When was that? Because in the safety report, it says that there was no pedestrian
Yeah.
injuries. That's why I'm not understanding.
Chris, do you know when that
Why
took
this
place?
It took place, I believe, after the study.
Was that
Well, I
after
think
the
there was-
report was
I
done?
think there was time to react to it after the study was complete. That makes sense.
So what motivated the study?
I'm sorry.
What motivated the study? Why did we do the study?
We've been talking for a long time in terms of trying to find grant dollars to renovate Losantiville Avenue. And the idea of the study was to determine what the traffic patterns were and to see if there were safety things that we could incorporate into a longer term plan. One of the things that we have applied for through the county is a grant to do a complete planning of Losantiville Avenue, to envision what it would look like, whatever our total. Some people had, the previous council had said it would be nice if Losantiville Avenue would look like Montgomery Road at some point in time. So there has been discussion about what it would take to move utilities underground, do different kinds of things with the sidewalks, possibly change the pattern of the traffic to increase the side of the right of way as you're going eastbound towards Pleasant Ridge. The idea is, as we are able to apply for grants and get money, we should have a centralized focus on doing things that we can accumulate into one final result.
So what was exactly approved? out of the Los Angeles study for the council? Or what did, you said that they gave input and then things, what moved forward after the Los Angeles study for council?
So the application of the grant funding through round 2 sorta was approved by council. We received the funding, and now we're in the process of trying to determine what those changes are gonna take place.
And round 2 sort of funding is specific to the Weehee Elbrook
Correct.
locations?
To these 2 intersections.
And why those were prioritized is because of that bullet on the recommendations that said rebuild those with compliant crosswalks, et cetera. That's why that was
Correct,
prioritized.
school safety, the fact that we're having mechanical problems with the signals. Both of those intersections are ugly.
It started by the issues with the lights.
With the lights not,
Where that rolled into, okay, so let's look at the whole thing.
So I think, Mr. Pridnoff, we've had probably in the last year 4 service requests from Capital Electric to reconfigure or to service the lights, particularly at the Weehee intersection.
Yeah, those are very expensive bills. Trying to remember, Ms. Cheney may remember better. I think there was someone had mentioned also about crossing Los Santoville, meaning because the whole big picture of the traffic study was trying to figure out where to put crosswalks. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they wanted a crosswalk,
At Stover.
at
Stover,
Stover to the school.
I think I even remember when I was on council getting requests like that. But that's long gone.
anybody else have questions?
The push button, how does that work? Just walk me through that. If I don't push the button, is it gonna give me a cross or only if I push?
So the plan is not to, except on Sabbath. So that was one thing.
But there's also Jewish holidays when we're not allowed to push the button.
Okay.
So
So there are other days that we can program specifically.
So every year, somebody's gonna have to manually program that based on holidays in the calendar?
They can be fixed days. If they're fixed days, then we can set them.
Fixed on a lunar calendar.
I don't think they're really consulting.
So yes, if we need to change the Jewish holidays, then we can. The holidays throughout the year.
That's not the big task, right, to do, to reprogram that? I don't think it's a big deal.
So who's responsible for programming it though?
So not overly complicated. That actually brings up, I will let you keep going. I have another thought to expand on that. One thing that we intend to do is to add school flashers as part of the signals. So right now, they're just flat sheet signs. So what we're planning to do is to add in school flashers that again will be programmed. You can program them. There are different options. You can have standalone options that are solar powered and they have their own controller. What we do in a couple of different municipalities is that we program them through the signal controller. So it's an output from the traffic signal controller to the flashing lights for the school. So you can get pretty elaborate with that in your scheduling, or you can just go a fixed schedule. Hey, every weekday from 7 or 8 to 8:30 a.m. and 3 to 3:30 p.m. It flashes every weekday. We can go through and schedule for holidays so that that's additional. So yeah, the push buttons give you different options. And we can put in certain plans so that the pedestrian phase recalls. For example.
So what we would hope to accomplish with this project is to have a menu of things that would be consistent that we would employ across Los Santoville Avenue. Because as you're looking at Los Santoville now, the markings that are up at Englewood, that was a newer project than what was done at Hamel, where there is a crosswalk that was added versus what we do in the central business district. So we've talked about wanting to reconfigure with the bump outs for pedestrian crosswalks at other areas along with Sanibel, also employing the idea of doing the road dial along that area. So signage, markings, drives me crazy that we have different kinds of street markings in various places. I'd like to see it all be consistent at some point.
I think my concern is, I know others feel differently, that beautification is a priority, but right now, what I keep going back to is what is a priority based on the strategic plan? And we've yet to get community input for that, so it's hard to say that this, I hear you on the pedestrian safety, although like unfortunately that report also tells me that we don't have a pedestrian safety issue. Every intersection was rated an A or a B, which says there's no issue. So in my head, I'm trying to reconcile why are we prioritizing this area versus other areas, because if you remember a couple months ago when we had folks in from Ridge Acres, we told them we couldn't spend a couple $1,000s to put in speed bumps when there is lots of kids running around that street, right? And that's a safety issue. But we've invested a lot in this study that's telling you that there's not a safety issue for Sanibel.
So Ridge Acres is being done in round 3 funding. We've
I
received
understand that,
money.
but there was a specific request for speed bumps and they were told no.
So if there's funding currently for this project, would it cover the entire project?
Yes.
Can that funding be used for any other project?
No.
What are the ramifications if we don't use the funding within our allotted timeframe?
They
We
will
get it
deploy
at-
it to other communities.
Thank you.
What is the funding earmarked for this project?
I'm sorry, say it again.
What is the funding earmarked for this project?
I don't have a specific number with me, but
I believe the construction estimate was $760,000 and it was the 70-30 grant for construction, so 30% match from the village and 70% grant from SORTA.
So it's not fully funded. We would still have to come up with 30%. We've appropriated 30%.
which is part of the road funding that we have.
That's coming out of the village budget, not from SORTA.
It's coming out of the road levy, correct? Not out of the general fund.
But it's already there.
It's already there and earmarked for this project versus other projects in the village.
And again, going back to the history was that the reason why this was prioritized at that point was A, because we didn't have the input from the people that live there, and B was because the lights are costing the village that much. So we
Right.
wanted to get that taken care of, and then round 3, we were gonna go for the Ridge Acres area. That was the history of it. At this point, yes, we might say that that is more important than what we have here right now, but it's a little far down the road because we're already up to this point in this project. That was-
No, I hear you. There's sunken cost. So I feel like we have no choice but to approve this. But I am frustrated that I am frustrated, I suppose, with previous council on having a lack of a strategic plan and lack of community input to understand where we need to prioritize and where there are actual safety issues for investment.
That's fair.
And
And I think,
I was gonna just say, I did review some of the documentation that was sent out to prepare, but there was like even still new information that was presented just now. Like for example, that part of it is funded and then part of it we're gonna have to match. I had no idea that there was actually anything wrong with the light signals. Like some of that information would have been nice to know, so I feel like better prepared and not so blindsided walking into this
Right.
meeting now.
because there's no information in any of the reports about the lights. It talked about how they were not in compliant, and if we do that, we need to meet MUTCD, which I don't understand what that is, compliance. But it didn't talk about anything about these large expenses that we're having. I think it would be helpful for us as new council members and committee members if we had an accounting of all the projects, all the studies that have been done in the last 12 months by the administration, so that we can come in more fully informed. I can't go back and watch 12 months of council meetings. I attended many of them, but I think it would be helpful if you all can send us what has been invested in as part of a study or project or reports. And then we can, when we have the town halls for the community to give input on the strategic plan, we have an understanding of what we're already sort of tied to. And I think it would be helpful if we had like, is there a procedure manual? Is there standard operating procedures? Because, even the agenda, Ron, I didn't know that I had been sending you an agenda that's not in the right format until I finally asked you. It'd be helpful to have this information ahead of time, just so we're not wasting time in these meetings.
I would agree.
I think it would be helpful if we had an onboarding actually scheduled, because that should have been a part of it. But if we can get a copy of any procedure manuals for the village, any standard operating procedures, even the police department, if we can have an insight into what that looks like, that would be helpful for us to do our best jobs here.
So I think we're happy to address all of those things. I'm wondering if that is the best use of our engineer's time.
I don't think it's the
discuss
best
that
use of our
now.
engineer's time. I think we can vote on this issue and then move on.
Motion to,
I don't know that we necessarily need a vote this evening. I think what we're looking for is there an agreement on the plan? If there is additional information that you would like to have or feedback that you would like to give us, this was more of an introduction to it. We're not asking for a decision this evening. That was not the intent.
So one question, so regarding the strategic plan, I think we intend to, this is more of a long-term goal, redevelop what we call North Weehee. And I know, like when you introduce this today, the idea is like, let's get it right now so that we don't have to come back 5 or 10 years from now. So how do we guarantee without having any idea really what is going to be redeveloped over there, that what we're doing now would be correct? Does that make sense?
So say that again.
There is no actual plan for North Weehee as far as so how do we know what we decide to do this now will fit into whatever this non-existent plan is? How do we guarantee that 5 or 10 years from now, this does not have to be changed again?
So the immediate need is to address the signal issue
Okay.
and pedestrian safety.
Mhm.
The concern is that whatever things that we put in, addressing those two issues are not something that we would take out if we would do additional development. On the North Weehee piece, on the eastern side of Weehee where they're taking the buildings down now,
Mhm.
there should not be any involvement with the actual intersection itself on anything that gets built there. Of course, we're taking a risk doing that, as you do with anything and trying to move business forward.
Because I mean, are the number of lanes going to be appropriate if this North Weehee turns into something bigger than what we can imagine, for example?
If there is the potential that, depending on what your traffic looks like and what we, so say the southbound approach, part of our signal design in order to keep the costs on the lower end is that we went with combination arms. So as opposed to having one pole and one arm on each corner, we're using caddy cord. So in this case, so the bakery quarter, the northeast quarter. So that's where one of the signal poles is going to be. And then the southwest quarter on UDF, that's where the other signal pole is going to be. So both of those will have two arms. So say if there's future development and you need to widen the road, most likely potential for widening the road would be to the west, which would minimize any kind of significant impacts to the signal itself. If we need to set back that pole on the northeast corner, we can. We've talked to, the right of way is pretty tight there, and so this actually is an easy opportunity for the village to do a bit of an easement for the signal. So if that is a big concern, we can push it back. In my opinion, you're probably likely to go west with the road if it's needed, which in that case, we're kind of minimizing any potentials. Talking about a pedestrian pedestal potentially that we need to do.
Okay, thanks. That's good insight.
what's the deadline for approving or not approving the project in terms of our funding?
So we need to do a bid sometime within the next, what did you say, 3 to 4 weeks, something like that.
When's the next council meeting?
So what the bid process looks like is JMA handles a request for bids. They handle that entire process for us. There's an actual opening of the bids that takes place in this room. Lowest bid gets the offer, or gets the job, I should say.
Usually once.
So
And to move forward to that point, does any action of council need to be taken?
I think if we have a decision sometime within the first week of March, we're in good shape.
Yeah, I can't, and forgive me, Ron, I can't remember if, every community is different. Some communities, you have to pass legislation to advertise an award, and some communities, you don't have to pass any legislation to advertise, you just wait to pass legislation to actually award and sign the contract, and I can't remember what you guys do. So you either have to pass legislation before we advertise, or you pass legislation to actually award the contract.
Do you think we could have the solicitor be able to let us know by the next council meeting if legislation needs to be passed to award or not?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, does the administration happen to know which of the two routes do we need to pass legislation to advertise, or do we not need to?
No, the only thing, the next thing that council would act on is, I would like to have a consensus of what we're going to do to the intersections. And then council would pass legislation to accept a bid from whoever bids for the project, which is at the next council meeting, which we'll need to have this discussion. Hamel Avenue is approved and ready to go. Council will need to approve the contract to move forward on Hamel Avenue. So that was all planned prior to the election. It's already been done. So I understand with the new council, there may be different ways that we want to do things going forward, but there's also this other work that's in the pipeline that's been completed. So we're happy to modify to whatever needs to be done. Just need to know what your expectations are. To answer your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does this plan include putting in a slope by the school, dropping the speed there by the school?
I'm
zone?
sorry.
Signage for this, are you
As
asking?
of now, there's no drop in speed. You don't have to go slow in front of that school.
So the school zone is 20 miles per hour, but it'll be a flashing beacon, it'll say 20 miles an hour. 20 either end. So it's within, your school zone is within 300 feet, an extension of 300 feet from the building, basically, which happens in this case to be kind of right at Wiki and right at Elm.
So 750,000 is the budget for this project as is. Correct?
That was the construction estimate, correct?
Is that the full budget or is there something else?
There were design costs as well.
So what's the,
Administration.
so what would be the full amount?
I don't have that in front of me, but I would guess that the total design and administration was probably about 13% of 760, so another maybe 100, I think. Do we get NRF funds also for Lusanville?
I don't know that we applied for
We did,
those,
right,
for
yeah.
this,
Yes, we did for Wheaties.
because this was a specialized,
Yeah.
more of a
I
specialized
was
project.
more focused on the striping than I was on the city budget, but I can confirm that with Ron, if that information to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anything else before we go into the next topic? No?
Nope.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Really, these, I would like
That's great. Thank you.
And those are the same, just so you know, they're just two different aerials. One shows the aerial a little more underneath, so you can see the existing. So they look a little different, but they're the same.
All right, next we have moving the police officers to the second floor. Chief Campbell, I don't know if you're gonna talk about that, or Ron.
Chief? Yeah. You're up.
We have occupied the area of the municipal building. It's basically been, the square footage has been unchanged since the PD has been in the building. We have a lot more personnel and a lot more equipment that we have to fit into these spaces. So we explored using some of the space that the fire department used to use upstairs for bunk areas and offices. I don't know, you can talk the history of some of the space up there.
Yeah, so back in the 60s and 70s, it was a recreation commission. It was just a big room that they stopped using for years. So it was offered to the fire department, and it's funny, I was just cleaning up my basement and I found pictures of when we built that. So the fire department built the offices up there. And that's how because we had one office for the entire department. We had the same position. We were growing more staff, more personnel, so we needed more space. So that's how we got that space.
Yeah, so it's been empty for a few years now. We started looking at if we can make use of that space, keeping in mind that we have to deal with the public. We don't want to change that interaction area. People are used to coming up to the doors, seeing the clerk or seeing officers. So we have rooms that are dedicated. One is an interview and a holding area room. It's made to detain prisoners, but a lot of times we have to interview people in there, citizens in there as well. It's not a very comfortable space. It's not been updated in several years. And what we're left with for working areas of the police department is 2 rooms that everybody works in. The way we've grown over the years, people are more or less piled up on one another. If somebody's working on an investigation, you've got all the other officers coming and going in this small area. It's very crowded, it's very hectic. It's dark, it's hot. Officers, I was explaining to this brewer last week that, in the wintertime, this time of year, the officers bundle up for their shifts, and a lot of times it's layered underneath all their equipment. So you come in the wintertime, it's not like you take off your coat and hat and get to work and cool down. Guys run the air conditioners year round. And even though we do that, the back office where most of the work is done, it's typically over 80 degrees in there every day. In January, just the way the building is set up, just the heat pours into that room. Doesn't circulate well. I don't think there's any air returns over there. So if we were to go up there right now, I'm confident it's over 80 degrees. There's fans piled up. There's actually fans in front of fans to try to pull air into the back to try to cool it down. So the thought is we would use those spaces for meeting with the public. We can clear a lot of the stuff that's accumulated out of there, spread into these new areas, and create at least 4 new office spaces for people. So right now, we have my office and we have an office for the lieutenant. We have 2 supervisors that don't have offices. And we have an investigator that doesn't have an office. And that's an issue when you're working on things. You want to be able to kind of keep your progress going and not have to pack everything up and start over every single shift. So being able to spread people out so that they have these specialized areas to work and still be down here to interact with the public is what we're planning to do. I was hoping to have some drawings for you this evening. We got an email back late this afternoon from a company we're looking at that took measurements for us last week. They're not going to have them for a couple more days. They might have them for tomorrow. I can email them out to Ron. We can share with council well before the next meeting so you can see the space we're looking at. Also, if anybody wanted to tour and look at where we're working and kind of explain the plans, we can show you the space and then the space that's available for us. There's a lot of space up there. It would help us greatly.
Yeah, I'd like to see this tour, what spaces to which you're referring. I mean,
Do you have an estimated cost for this? Or is there a cost?
Yeah, looking at what would be needed up there, the ceiling, we replaced the ceiling, reconfigure the lighting, where these, there's these walls that were set up that don't go completely to the ceiling, and it was to allow for sleeping areas for the firefighters. This could be utilized as office nooks or office cubbies, but lighting was a concern because when they were up in that space, they were trying to rest. So we would change the lighting, make it newer, more efficient, clean up the ceiling, there's some paint, some wiring. We would need some furniture, that's what we're waiting to hear back from this company as well. But we can incorporate what we already have versus what we'll need to supplement what we have. But Mr. Putoff's estimates are right around $3,000.
And that's with us doing the work.
Including the electrical?
Yeah.
We have somebody certified?
Well, electrical was basically lights.
We don't need somebody certified to do that?
The
this code
wiring's up-
enforcement, we gotta trust him.
The wiring's
We
up
also
in the
have 3
seat.
fans one, that doesn't look no code.
It's not. There's a lot about what they're doing right now that isn't the code. This is why this is important.
Is this in your budget? Your police budget?
This was not planned for this year, but I think we have it, I think we can find it within a capital expense line. This wasn't something, because we weren't sure the time frame of when we would be able to really look at this project and put it on the calendar. And again, I was away for a lot of last year. So this was something that we were exploring before that.
And as far as the timeline too, for the service guys, for us to do this, once we get into spring and summer, it gets real hard to do projects because we're outside working. And then in the fall, we have leave. So this is the time of year that, where we do all these internal projects.
What are the amount of hours, or I guess the cost and staffing time that you are estimating for this project?
I have not estimated.
That'd be helpful to understand, because that is still an investment. We're taking folks away from other projects to pay them. And our staff is paid by hour,
Correct.
so they could either not be paid, right? We cut them to part-time. if
We have
need
2
them.
full-time guys and the rest are part-time.
Right, so we're saying we're gonna staff them for 4 hours for this project. It'd be helpful to understand what that investment would be.
It's gonna be a guess. Because then it goes down renovation, as soon as you start doing stuff.
Right. But if I hire a contractor to do work, they gotta give me an estimate on labor.
Right.
Right?
And I'll give you an estimate,
Yeah.
but, and that's an estimate too, because if there's things that pop up that we didn't plan for, and you don't know till you start working on the project.
Right, you're gonna open up a can of worms. And is this a priority now because of the staff availability? To your point, Chief Campbell?
It's a priority because what we're learning is, so we have a work area for our corporal, who's basically sitting right in front of our captain. And we've had issues, I think you were over there when we were, like, you kind of saw, when we're trying to work on things, it's becoming more and more apparent we need the space. When we learned of some space that was available, Mr. Putoff's office, he was doing some code enforcement there, wasn't using it full time. One of our detectives started using it because she was working with him on code enforcement anyway.
Mhm.
So she started using some of that space, and we saw benefit in that. Um, I'd like to have a more detailed plan going forward and, how that started, but it clearly showed that it was well worth it to press forward with this project.
And they're still using your old office?
She's not.
She's not.
Why not?
The mayor took it.
Why?
He said he needed it.
So the mayor is currently occupying an office that we were using for a full-time employee?
Correct. Chief Campbell and I did our best to persuade him otherwise, but
And if you got that office back, would you need this moved?
We would.
Okay.
If, again, in the future, I can show you guys the space. It's set up, there's one door that kind of goes onto this level. There's an office directly to the left, there's an office in front of this hallway that's here. And then it opens into a larger room where there's 2 offices behind the wall, and then there's 3 more offices that are separated by partitioned walls.
well, that one's more of storage. I wouldn't,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't call that office.
But that's how I would use it.
Yeah.
We can do reconfiguring around there to take advantage of all or part of those offices. It just kind of depends on what the council's opinion is with this. There's a lot of space right now that's just being wasted. And we'd like to be able to take advantage of that.
The room currently being used for interviewing and holding people. Was that upstairs or was that downstairs?
That's here. If you guys have 3 minutes, we can walk and look at it.
I think we gotta keep recording now.
That's on this floor, and that would remain on this floor. You're not. Okay.
How often is that office used? How often in the past 3 months is that office used?
Which office?
The detention center and the living room.
Weekly. The area we're in, if somebody comes in to make a report, we use this holding room, because we can't have the public in with our police database computers, RCIC. So we talk to them in there. If we were to move, Corporal Blanton and Captain Reed wouldn't occupy this front office anymore. We would use that as our receiving area for the public, where we could sit at a table and discuss the issue versus in a room where there's a bench with handcuffs attached to it.
Right.
Because we need that as well. I'd like this to be separate.
And when you see the room, it clearly needs work, but there's no way to do anything right now because everyone's occupied. So if we were to move them upstairs, then the next project would be clean that up, fresh coat of paint, and make it look better.
Yes, right now, the room that they're talking about having would be the new, interview public space. It's currently housing 3 working spaces for the police staff.
Would it be possible, since it sounds like the plan would be that if this were to be approved to move forward, that then the next would be to work on this level and fix things up here?
Yeah, that's what
Could we get like a phased estimate for each part? And so
until we move, once you see how much stuff is in there, I can't even give you a yes until everything's out and we see what we're dealing with in there. Because there's some HVAC issues that need to be addressed. The system needs to be found. Well, part of the heat problem is, and this is already, Mr. Earth and I have worked on this for a couple of years, is new control systems for HVAC. We got a new chiller. The next phase is control systems. That's going to help, but then they need to balance that system. And we need to put new registers, new vents in. And there's no way to do that kind of work while they're occupied. We would literally be on top of them, knocking dust and dirt. It's just, it doesn't make sense.
I understand. So the ask is that we approve this and then you all move forward? Is that what you're asking for? That we approve this expense and staff time?
Yes.
Well, I think
we'd have to
ultimately we need the space plan. to see who's going where and what space is actually needed.
Yeah.
Because the issue becomes, what do we do with that larger office that's currently occupied with the mayor? So that, and I believe that's part of the plan, that needs to be used, because there's a natural break when you go in that door, that we'll be able to secure that with a key fob.
So you all are also asking to move the mayor out of that office that he just took, correct, with this plan?
Correct.
And we swear that's not the reason for this plan?
No, we talked,
Just double checking.
Chris and I
don't
talked
wanna
about
get
this,
in-
and it kind of stalled when Chris got sick, and Captain Reed and I had gone round and round about trying to improve over there. We did the clerk's office, that was an easy, because she's the one occupied. But there's no way to do any work, because they have more,
I guess, we are running out of time, and I'm cognizant of that. My only question is, if you all have been working on this, why wasn't it in the budget? We've been working on that, we approved the budget in July, June, and then we do the appropriated budget, we approved that in November. So why wasn't it a piece of that budget?
We didn't know how close we were to being able to do this project.
Okay.
So when one of my officers started using the space, and we saw just the relief it gave from being able to work in a more secure area, and we really saw the value of it. But plans got complicated, so we're trying to sort it out. I mean, I think there's a good compromise up there with the two offices. One was the captain's office, you said.
that was the officer's bunker. That would add money to the budget.
Yeah.
That's not budget for that. And some of the other reason why the delay was administration, we wanted to make sure we were never gonna have a fire department back before we reallocated that space.
That's it, done.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what would be helpful for next steps is if we could see like a full layout and a plan with both estimated labor costs, understanding it's a wild estimate, including the furniture or whatever you all need before we can make any recommendations.
And after this meeting is done, I'd like to see the spaces so I can make a better informed decision as well.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I think they're in the following meeting, but
yes.
Yeah,
it
could we,
doesn't speak me.
could we also do that after the finance meeting?
Cool. All right, the only other thing we had on the agenda, and we've got 3 minutes left, is if you had any update, Chief Campbell, to the request for the police department record system.
The only update I have is that Sundance is not able to attend. They forwarded a demonstration of the program, which was a really large overview of how like a CAD works with the comm center. A lot of it's not we wouldn't use. But I do have the quote from them. If we were to do all of the modules, it was $16,180. The estimated implementation is 90 days. I've never been that lucky with anything that involved computers, so I'll expect it to go a lot longer than that. But the plan is very detailed.
Can we actually task you, Zach, with, as the systems IT, I forgot what you called yourself, with your technical expertise, can you actually look at that in the demo? And I know you had some specific questions, and maybe make a recommendation to us at next meeting?
I mean, I could look at it. It's hard to say. I'm not familiar with the needs or the use cases of police systems.
None of us are.
I mean, I'd be happy to. If that's something that I'm allowed to, I'd be happy to. I think it would be interesting, if
I think
anything.
you're the best person suited on this committee
Yeah.
to answer some of those questions, and you asked a lot of questions last time, so if you can work with Chief Campbell and look at that, and then come back and kind of, what is the layman's terms recommendation, that would be super helpful.
Chief, is that something that we're willing to do?
I can do it. I mean, there's a lot of computer talk in here
Right, that's his
that
language.
I don't worry about. Does it work? Is it secure?
Sure.
Is it future proof? I don't want to have to revisit this in 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah, sure.
So speaking to, does it work? Is it secure? yes and yes, because it's implemented with RCIC on the officers' terminals in their cars.
Yeah.
So that hurdle's been cleared by others in front of us, and,
Yeah, for me, my concern, and maybe this will clarify, for you, like, my concern isn't necessarily like use. Like, use is the needs of the people actually using it. Like, I'm not going to know the actual needs of a database system for the police. Like, oh, this record needs to match with this record. The things that the expertise I could maybe lend some information on is looking at the cost structure, how hosting versus potential hosting, maintenance and service agreements, cost increases over a number of years, things that are kind of general to the industry. The specifics, I think it'd be interesting to see, but I wouldn't necessarily.
No, those questions,
No,
I think,
sort
are
of
the
that
exact
stuff.
questions we had last time.
Yeah.
And if you can maybe meet with the chief, get those answers, come back to us,
Yeah.
that would be great.
I mean, if it's something that I'm allowed to see, I'd love to look at the cost breakdown. I think it would be interesting.
Awesome. All right, so we'll table that for next time. Let's see, we are at time, so just a reminder, we've got a meeting scheduled for March 4th at 6 p.m. Next month, we also are going to talk about landlord-tenant issues. That will be the primary focus, maybe. And please read those documents I sent out prior. That would be really helpful. And a reminder, community engagement is also doing a town hall Sunday, February 25th from 3 to 5, and Wednesday, February 28th, 6 to 8 p.m. So please join for those. And the last item I had, which maybe we can talk about this in finance, is we approved the solicitor contract as a last minute thing in our December meeting. We talked about doing an RFP and I've not heard word of that. So whether that's executive or finance, I'd like to talk about putting a date for an RFP for the solicitor's contract. Cool. All right, motion to adjourn.
Actually,
Second.
We had a guest pop up. Did you have anything that you wanted to add, Ms. Maxine? No? Yes or no? You can say
I was
no.
watching online. And
Okay.
I was watching some things and I was like,
Okay, all right.
You know, so yeah. that's
Okay.
sometimes I try to pop in, but yes,
Okay, thanks. Just being, I wanted to make sure you were heard if you had something to
normally
say.
I try to follow Mr. Brown's protocol.
Okay.
You know,
Sign up ahead.
sign up ahead of time. I don't want to disrespect it.
Same.
Whatever I have, I make sure I have it.
Okay. All right, cool.
There was a motion and a second.
All right,
All in favor?
sure.
Great, thank you. 2 minutes over.
What are the dates on the community engagement town